Hi guys, Tuesday, October 22nd. Kind of an update what I worked on today. Let me see. Of course, you saw the video in which I took the pan out. Today I removed the overhead AC unit that goes here. Remember, those were not installed by Volkswagen themselves, but the actual dealerships in which sold Volkswagens. Still need to clean this, which is the adhesive they sprayed on top of the tin top, and they put their sound deadening material. Kind of looks like not quite similar horsehair padding that they use in the seats, but kind of like a burlap blend of horsehair, kind of a product like that. The overhead unit came across the perch here, and then the supply to tubing hoses and stuff that were going to the compressor, the condenser, and basically like the radiator, more or less, of it. Came along here on this channel, tucked behind some plastic trim. It's actually a very stylish unit, but of course very antiquated compared to today's technology. You can kind of peep in the battery tray. Those two holes there is where they duct the hoses going to the compressor. And of course, as always, you see this area is boogered up for where they always cut out the body to make way more for the York compressors that were common on these motors. A Type 4 motor has about 80 horsepower new, or stock, and then you put a compressor on there that rawed anywhere from 7 to 10 horsepower. Made it kind of a dumb approach, if you ask me. Up top here you see the eyelet there, and this one as well. That's the cross member for the transmission mount. That started in 72 through 79 on the bay windows. The early bays didn't have this cross member for the transaxle. I pulled off the CV joints from the transaxle, dropped the transmission. Of course, you have the carrier mount here. Basically just down that way you'll have what basically looks like a piece of steel block, 2 bolts, 17 millimeter to hold it up. That's the carrier mount for the back end. Disconnect the grub screw that attaches the hockey stick from the transmission to the shift linkage. This here is going to be the backup light switch. That comes off the harness, runs through the firewall here, and comes back. This wire here that plugs onto terminal 15, the hot lead on the ignition coil when the engine's in, but that plugs into the side of the transmission. But disconnect this wire here, the grub screw from the shift linkage, the ground strap, which if you can see it right there, that stud 13 millimeter, and the bracket transmission ground. Take that apart, transmission mount, cross member, disconnect that. 2 15 millimeter bolts there, the 17s on the bottom, CV joints, boom, transmission's out. Pretty straightforward job. They're not crazy heavy. I guess probably around 100 pounds, plus or minus. Just put a jack under it, get it out of the way, then you can move it. I'm trying to think. I removed the rear shocks, so the rear end's just sitting on the torsion bars. There's a little bit of a wiring mess. Some of that is not factory, so I'll have to go through that. You can see the rot on this battery tray, so I'll be cutting that out and welding a new battery tray. Trying to think what else I could show you guys that I've accomplished since we last spoke, since you checked out my work. I guess one of the hardest parts about doing a resto like this is just keeping up with all the shit that you take off of it. Of course, I mean, I got everything in Ziploc bags. I mean, the key is just to label every damn thing you touch, and try your best not to jingle everything together. I mean, you don't want, I mean, it sucks. Ziplocs are not cheap, but they're not expensive. It's just one of those things that you're going to go through. Just go ahead and bite the bullet and label things according to what you're particularly working on. You don't want to just like write steering column and then throw the steering column hardware in there, plus like the dash screws, or like, you know, you want to keep things designated. It just makes it a lot easier on you, because you're not going to remember, and whether you go back 3 months later when you're doing reassembly or 3 years later, it just makes shit tough. Picked up the engine tin from the powder coater. Engine tin looks very nice. This is everything but 2 pieces. Excuse me. That's the flat for the cooling for the thermostat. The other one I did not separate from the linkage arm, so that wasn't powder coated. And then of course the 2 flanges that go underneath are lacking, so I didn't powder coat those because I'm going to rob those from that Tupperware right there that came off that engine in the back. This is a 3 rib or an 002. It's the 72 through 74 transmission. It's a good transmission. It's geared a little lower than the 091s that are found in the later bays. The bell housing is a little smaller. That transaxle has a little bit more low-end torque on it, but Volkswagen went to the 091 to beef up the transmissions from the larger output of a 2-liter. That bell housing transmission runs on a 210, a 210 millimeter flywheel. The motor here is a 2-liter. That's a 228 flywheel. So I need to track down a flywheel. That way I could button up the engine to the transmission. What you see there is kind of this burlap material. This is what I removed. This is what Volkswagen from the factory had. It's kind of a sound deadening material that was glued, adhered to the top of the bus. Of course, the white is your tin top. And that snazzy space age thing, that is the overhead AC unit. Plastic, the sun's taken its toll on it. It's kind of turned it to cream. I imagine it was probably white. The contraption here on the bottom, all that shit is what underrides on the bottom of the bus for getting cool air to the components on the AC. That's basically what I got accomplished today. I had a couple of different projects going on. So I only got about 5 hours of labor in today. But just keeping you up to date. Parts galore, label everything, keep things designated, separated. Don't throw anything away. You never know what you're going to need. Take your time, be safe, and stay tuned, guys. Thanks for following.